that their schemes are out front, that they've been scheming for months. They've been game playing to make sure that you're not president. They're bragging about it to the newspapers. You see article after article about a coup against you. You see article after article about an insurrection against you. You see the farm team out there burning our cities and so forth and so on, and they're threatening even worse, the never-Trumpers too. What do you say to the American people about what you're seeing with the Democrat Party, the violence, the media kind of censoring on behalf of the Democrat Party? Very much, yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. It was bad before. Yeah. But it's gotten to a point, they're stone cold dishonest. The New York Times is stone cold dishonest. The Washington Post is a disaster. You can't get a good story. It's disgusting. And then you go to ABC. NBC probably is the worst of all. CBS is a disaster. And then you go into the real beauties, that MSDNC as we call it. And of course, CNN. But at least CNN, you know where they're coming from. You know they're stone cold dishonest. At least you know that. So it's a sad thing. I mean, it's a very sad thing. We have some honest media. Fox is good, but Fox is not what it was. I'll be very honest with you. They've become politically correct. You know, they think it's wonderful. They have more Democrats on than they have Republicans. I'm complaining about it all the time. You know, with all of that being said, we're doing much better than we did 4 years ago, and there's much more enthusiasm. You see these boat parades, truck parades, tractor parades. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We have nothing to do with it. And the enthusiasm is much greater, and I think that's because we've really done a great job. You know, we've done things that nobody thought possible.
Breaking news and my take. It is unlikely that we will get a John Durham interim report or any indictments before the election. Now just 37 days away. A debate has begun within the Department of Justice as the timing of John Durham's criminal investigation conclusions. I'm being told by sources it is now too close to the election and could be viewed as politically motivated. However, I can confirm Durham's investigation is significant and it is expanding. Reports Friday that Durham has expanded the scope of his investigation to include the Clinton Foundation donations while Clinton was sitting Secretary of State. The same group, remember, at the FBI was leading these two investigations. It was led by former FBI agent Peter Strzok. He was overseeing both investigations, one into the Clinton use of an unsecure server and one into Donald Trump's alleged collusion. They were treated extremely differently, even though there was no evidence found of wrongdoing for Trump and gross negligence found in Clinton's handling of her unsecured server. Again, I believe, based on my conversations with sources, it is unlikely you will hear any conclusions by John Durham by November 3rd. I asked AG Barr about the timing of this investigation earlier this year.
So that has been surprising to me, that people aren't concerned about civil liberties and in the integrity of our governmental process. In terms of the future of Durham's investigation, you know, he's pressing ahead as hard as he can, and I expect that, you know, we will have some developments hopefully before the end of the summer. But as I said, his investigation will continue. It's not going to stop because of the election. What happens after the election may depend on who wins the election.
Welcome back. The closer the election gets, the harder the bombshells fall. The latest one dropping on former Vice President Joe Biden in the form of an explosive new Senate report detailing his son Hunter's questionable behavior, including concerns of bribery, extortion, even payments to women who, quote, appear to be linked to an Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. Senate Homeland Security Chairman Ron Johnson has spearheaded the GOP investigation, along with Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, and he joins me now. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
Your committee released this document this week. Walk us through the most stunning parts of what we need to understand about this document, Senator.
Well, let's just start with Ukraine. We found that Hunter and his partner Devin, their businesses raked in about $4.2 million. That's about $140,000 a month, almost $1.7 million per year for being on this board. We also found out through George Kent that a $7 million bribe was paid to the Prosecutor General's office 7 months after Hunter and Devin joined the board. And of course, Hunter was put on the board supposedly for corporate governance and transparency. We also found out that the financial dealings extended way beyond Ukraine. For example, a $3.5 million payment made to Hunter Biden's businesses by the former wife of the now deceased former mayor of Moscow. She's a billionaire. It's widely believed that she got her billions through corrupt practices when her husband was the mayor. And then, of course, all of the business associations that Hunter Biden, the millions in cash flow between China and Chinese nationals that had connections to the Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army. And what, Maria, what is most frustrating is the press has basically just dismissed it, saying, oh, there's nothing new here, nothing illegal. First of all, it's not my job in Congress to prove illegality or to prosecute. We're here to expose information that should be incredibly troubling to the American public, and yet the press just kind of shrugs and moves on.
Right. Well, they have obviously chosen a side on this. Now, I want to run an interview with Joe Biden because he was asked about this on ABC News, and we want to run it for you because I want to get your reaction of how he addressed it. Watch this.
What's your understanding of what your son was doing for an extraordinary amount of money?
I don't know what he was doing. I know he was on the board. I found out he was on the board after he was on the board, and that was it. And there's nobody.
Well, you've had a lot of time. Isn't this something you want to get to the bottom of?
No, because I trust my son.
Your reaction, Senator. This is, of course, Axios on HBO, an interview which ran December 19.
I hate to say it, but Joe Biden is lying to the American public. When he said in the tail end of 2019 that he never spoke to his son about his overseas business dealings, that was a lie. We know in testimony now from Amos Hochstein, who is the only people we know that actually spoke directly to the vice president about this glaring conflict of interest. The vice president then talked to Hunter, who then set up me with Amos Hochstein to talk about this very subject. We know that Hunter took a multi-hour plane trip over to China with his father, had a separate agenda, but during that trip, did arrange for a handshake between one of his business partners, Jonathan Lee, and the vice president. What was all that about? So I've never believed that vice president never talked to his son, Hunter. He's still lying to the American public, and the mainstream media has to ask far tougher questions.
Yeah, we have a graphic here of all of the international transactions that you were able to uncover, Senator. And you mentioned the $3.5 million wire transfer from the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. You mentioned opened a bank account with Chinese national, $100,000 global spending spree with James and Sarah Biden, and then paid non-residential woman who appeared to be linked to an Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. It's pretty extraordinary what you've come up with, but where will the accountability be? I mean, you just mentioned that the press is not making anything of it. I want to go through this interview with William Barnett as well. This also was declassified this week. I've got the declassifications right here in front of me. What struck you from this interview with Mr. Barnett, an FBI agent?
You know, primarily what he said, that the special counsel office was completely upside down. They already knew they wanted to get Trump. They already knew their theory of the case. And rather than have the evidence really guide the investigation, they basically just knew the evidence was there, and it's just a matter of how finding it. So they already come to their preconceived conclusion of this thing. And, Marie, if what you're reporting is correct, it is incredibly disappointing that John Durham is not going to be reporting. There would be what's political is if he doesn't report. We have had the deep, and I will call it the deep state, through these other investigations, prevent the American public from knowing what happened with the FBI's corruption of their investigation, the corruption of the transition process for now 3.5 years. We have been prevented from getting documents because John Durham doesn't want us to in any way, shape, or form affect his prosecution. So the bottom line, that means the American people might go to the polls without knowing the full extent and all the detail of all the corruption, again, of that FBI investigation and the corruption of the transition process. I think John Durham, if he's not going to present indictments, Attorney General Barr has to make available to the American public what they've already found out, or at a minimum, provide those documents to people like me that these things are under subpoena. You know, John Radcliffe has to declassify this information so that we can make it public to the American public before the election. The political nature is if we don't provide that information.
Well, there will be more declassifications, as far as I'm hearing, that there will be more declassifications potentially this week that could be very important and telling for the American people. But I agree with you. I've spent a lot of time, 3+ years, on this investigation and tried to seek out truth. I agree. The American people have a right to understand what took place here before they go to the polls. It's very disheartening that now what I'm hearing is that there will be no John Durham interim report, no indictments before the election.
So let me disagree a little bit with Chairman Graham, where he said he's very pleased with the production out of the FBI. I am not. Let me just give you one example. Here's a document we got from the General Services Administration. You can see that it's an email, and everything's presented except for the very bottom. They've redacted the mobile phone number of the person writing the email. Here's the exact same email we got from the FBI. You see something different here? Everything is redacted. And that, you know, we're supposed to get thousands of pages from I had to finally subpoena the FBI. They are on their second extension. Everything is due by, I think, the 30th of September, and that's the kind of information we get. It's non-information. We have to fight over redacting the same documents that we get from other agencies. So I am not happy at all with the document production we've gotten out of Director Wray and the FBI, not even close.
You know what? I'm really glad you put up those documents, because this is something that I have heard from day one for 3+ years. When Ratcliffe was in Congress, Nunes in Congress, yourself in the Senate, you've been demanding documents to ensure that you understood what took place, and they will not get you the documents. They sit on documents and make it incredibly hard for you to prove the point that you know is true, and that is that it was a sham investigation into President Trump, and there's a ton of wrongdoing here. Do you think you're going to get the documents? I mean, is this Christopher Wray? Why is Christopher Wray still in charge of the FBI when he is overseeing these agents sitting on things?
His job should be to restore the credibility and integrity of the FBI, and the only way you do that is through exposure. But the other point I have to make, Maria, when we finally do get these classified sections redacted or unredacted, when they become declassified, you look at what information you have, and you have to ask yourself the question, what national security interest was at stake here? Why was this ever redacted? The answer is almost always because it embarrassed the agency or it embarrassed a powerful person. That is not the reason to classify information. It's certainly not the reason to keep the truth from the American public. And that's all I've been trying to do, is I've been trying to reveal the truth. Another important point to make. You know, yes. I've been accused of peddling Russian disinformation. There is no Russian disinformation in our 87-page report. The press report on it, and I'm calling on the press. You were duped. You were leaked false information. You should not protect those sources that leaked you false information. It should be your journalistic duty to basically tell the American people who provided you false information that resulted in this 2 or 3 year national nightmare because of the false narratives that you carried the Democrats' water on.
Do your job, media. Ron Johnson, it's good to see you this morning, sir. Thank you.
I am your voice.